You know, I really miss Soul Calibur. Or Soul Blade? Soul Edge? I think it was Soul Blade. That doesn't matter. During my time as a fighting game player, which I wouldn't really call myself like a successful fighting game player, but it's very rare that one doesn't come out that I don't buy. Whether it be Grand Blue Fantasy, Soul Calibur, Tekken, Street Fighter, I've got a main in every game. And I take pride in the fact that I take some time to play all of them. My favorite would be the one that my parents introduced me to, namely my mother. She used to beat the shit out of me at this game all the time, and it would be Soul Calibur. The first of these games we played together would be Soul Calibur 2, which was my original introduction into the series. As time passed, I would take some time to pick up Soul Blade, learn more about the Soul Edge franchise as a whole, and then I continued to buy the games throughout. From Soul Calibur 2 on the GameCube, moving to Soul Calibur 3 on the PS2, Soul Calibur 4 on the Xbox 360, and then eventually on my PS4, Soul Calibur 5. I've followed this franchise through multiple consoles, not just generations, but like entire companies too. With the jump from these different companies, there have been some changes, whether it be the items and costume system, the customization system, which was later added in 3, or even the cameo characters, which we actually just talked about in a video. You should go watch it. What I'd like to know though is what happened? Like what in the holy Soul Calibur happened to my beloved sword franchise? Did it just disappear off the face of the earth due to bad sales and reception? Did it just not pan out for Bandai Namco and they were just like, we don't want to do this shit anymore, it's boring? Personally, I don't have those answers, but I am thoroughly disappointed that we haven't seen another exploration into the game. With Tekken being the only other version that does it, Soul Calibur was really interesting because it had an 8-way combat system. As a 3D fighter, it allowed you to move into ulterior spaces within the fighting plane and kind of rotate around your opponent. While this doesn't seem huge at a glance, Soul Calibur's big appeal was spacing. The fact that you're swinging around weapons that varied from anywhere to nunchucks to great swords and scythes, you always had to be careful of where you were stepping, and you had the opportunity to get around your opponent with that movement. It was great. I can't tell you how many times I've ducked under blade waves or dashed out of something. It's the type of dodging that comes straight out of Bloodborne almost, but it's a fighting game, which is kind of nice. To be honest with you, I think that Soul Calibur lost its direction and vision somewhere along the way. I'd say around Soul Calibur 4. One of the biggest missteps in the franchise, to me, I'm gonna get hate for this, is the fact that they added Starkiller, Darth Vader, and Yoda to the franchise. And it's not even because I don't think they could be compelling fighting game characters. As a matter of fact, Darth Vader and Starkiller were awesome in the game. I think the real problem was Yoda because he was this big and had a lightsaber a lot bigger than that, and had no problem jumping over you and getting around. My meaning though is that probably took a lot of money to get that deal to go through. And after that, they never really seemed to capture that same magic. The characters themselves became more diluted into their generic stereotypes. Some older characters did return, some newer ones came out, and their designs are just all over the place, and there seems to be no concise direction that they're going. It's just everything everywhere all the time, but less good. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that making changes throughout console generations and releases is an important thing. And I certainly don't think there's anything wrong with switching up the MO. As a matter of fact, I like the last Soul Calibur that came out. The customization was great, and it was a step in the right direction, aside from the microtransactions. And Geralt, the big cameo character for the game, was actually handled rather well. I think they did a great job of introducing his Witcher's kit and signs into the combat. You were able to swap between the swords depending on the move you were doing. It was pretty cool, honestly. There was a lot of love put into how to get him to work in there. And they did a similar thing with Altair and Deviljin, who were both in the game before that. Crazy stuff. And cool crossovers using existing licensing characters in the Bandai Namco wheelhouse, but then again, why couldn't we just keep doing that? You know, like what the hell happened? The story is, let me sum up the story for you because I think that might be a bit easier. So, at one point, there was a pair of magical swords for one reason or another that happened to shatter, one of them being Soul Calibur and another being Soul Edge. The titular one, Soul Edge, is sent out in a million pieces like Sukuna fingers and corrupts anyone who gets their hands on a piece. Everybody's after it because they're told that Soul Edge will be able to bring them closer to their true ambitions and dreams, giving them what they want most in life. This is a trap done by the sword itself. In a Muramasa kind of way, it's really just lulling you into getting you to kill more people to feed it blood so that it can grow the demon entity Inferno inside of it. Cool stuff. The fighting game characters themselves take inspiration from various places around the world, whether it be old world China, Germany, England, and everything in between around that part. There's a lot to choose from, and you're gonna find somebody in a style that appeals to you. In later generations, talking about stuff like Tira and Zasalamel, you get the more outlandish, weird type of characters, but those also kind of scratch an itch at the same time. Even Voldo, who is the nastiest, grossest fighting game character next to like Oro and a few others, he's cool in that his unique moveset is actively displayed in all the games that he's in. It evolves through all of the different games that he's in, and it hasn't really been replicated anywhere else. Now, that's not to say that this game isn't without its faults, and one of the things that it suffers from is the fact that it kind of copy-pastes a lot of characters. If it doesn't do anything to change the mold, they kind of just rehash someone. A great example of this would be Sophitia and Cassandra, a pair of sisters in the game from Greece? Rome? Who use a small shield and short sword style. It's cool, and the big difference between the two of them would be Cassandra has no problem chucking that shield at you, and she's a lot more aggressive. But past that, they're about the same kit, and that continues to be a problem throughout. There are some instances where characters like Charade and Olkadan just kind of move around and use whatever weapon they can get their hands on, whereas other characters just stay about the same. Siegfried has been Siegfried forever, except for that one game where he was Nightmare, but we knew that, and he was controlled, and he gets out. Yeah, that's number 2. I really wish that there was a greater deal of variation with these characters throughout. The fact that all of them are like trained fighters who are mastering their arts and traveling the world to hone their skills, I think it would have been really cool to see a natural evolution and progression of those skills, or even some new super arts based on that. All in all, I don't know. I think that the series had a lot of potential, and what drove it off the path was a few missteps. Things like adding microtransactions and not saying no to certain designs like Grow, which is just so everywhere. I think we'll get back to a point where we can see a release of a new Soul Calibur game, and when that happens, I just hope it's different, you know? We've been doing the same battle of Soul Edge and Soul Calibur forever, and I don't think that anything is intrinsically wrong with that, since it's a mainline story beat. I just think we can switch it up a little. I mean, sure, the twins from the last game were a cool way to explain like the transcendence of the curse and how that affects other people. It's a nice twist that it was the sister, not the brother, who was the new like Soul Edge host. But at the same time, it's like we have all these other really interesting, compelling characters and a list of them from the past too that you could choose from. We don't really need to keep creating these like niche pop culture reference folks to just kind of scratch an itch here and there, each brand new title. Let's refine what we have and make something really beautiful. The reality is, I don't think they're gonna make another one. At least, probably not anywhere until like 2026, 2027, if that. And when it does happen, I don't see them putting in a lot of really cool characters like Noctis, for instance, from the Final Fantasy series, who was in Tekken and did really good there, but I think he would have been better in Soul Calibur because the whole appeal there is that it's a weapon fighting game. And there's nothing else like that right now. There are a few other games like For Honor that offer some really detailed sword fighting, or even single player experiences like Ghost of Tsushima, which offer the same. But it's not the same at all. One of them is a combo focused fighting game in the 3D map with 8-way combat, and it's really cool. And the others are their own unique experiences. There's nothing wrong with that at all, but you just can't measure them the same. 2 different worlds. And if anyone's interested, Cervantes into Zasalamel in 3, Nightmare for the other ones. Those are my mains from across the franchise. I'm gonna have to stop myself here because if I keep going, I'm just gonna rant and this is gonna go nowhere, and it kind of feels like it already has. So let me just bring it back to what I'm trying to say. I believe that Bandai Namco has a very strong property on their hand with a storied legacy, one of which that they could really stand to give some love and evolve further. There's money to be made and people to be made happy with this. You just gotta take care of some of the problems. Those, however, are my opinions on the Soul Calibur franchise, the fact that I like it and the fact that I'd like to see it return, but I'd like to hear what you think. Maybe you think it's better that Soul Calibur is a flaming pile of garbage and is gone forever, or maybe you're like me and you're hoping that one day Bandai Namco will grace us again with that beautiful titular line, "Transcending history and the world, a tale of swords and souls eternally retold."